The Red River had always run quietly through the village of Yanshui, winding like a ribbon through jade-green hills and stone bridges worn smooth by time. Its waters were said to be sacred, tinted faintly crimson since long before memory. To the villagers, the river was not a stream of water, it was a god. They called her Zumo, the Blood Mother. Each year at the start of autumn, the villagers gathered at midnight to offer a prayer and a sacrifice, a silk doll soaked in wine and pricked with needles to appease her hunger and ensure the river did not take one of their own. It had worked. For generations, no one had drowned in Yanshui. Crops near the river thrived. The sick bathed in its waters and returned whole. But they never spoke of it beyond the village, and never asked more than they were given. In Yanshui, silence was its own kind of faith. That ended when the emperor sent his men. They arrived with scrolls and banners and flat, bright eyes. They nailed proclamations to the ancestral gate. All worship of local spirits is heresy. The empire recognizes only heaven, and the mandate. They pulled down the prayer stones. They burned the silken dolls. When the village elder resisted, they drowned him in the river. The next morning, the water turned red, not with reflection, but thick with blood. The scent of iron hung in the air for days. The soldiers laughed. A trick of the mud, they said. But the villagers knew better. They buried their dead, but the river did not accept the loss. The first returned a week later. It was Old Wu, the fisherman. He had drowned 2 seasons ago during a storm. His body never recovered. Now he stood at the edge of the river, dripping red, skin pale as bone, eyes black and weeping. He said nothing. He simply stared at the village until someone screamed. By dawn, more had come. Children who had fallen in and vanished. Women who had slipped while washing clothes. The elder, his lungs still swollen, whispered prayers backwards. They were not alive, but they were not dead. There was something else. The villagers locked their doors and burned incense. But it didn't matter. The drowned walked the riverbank, gazing toward the homes they once knew. At night, they sang low, wet songs that spoke of longing and hunger and pain. Some said they were calling for their loved ones to join them. Then the river began to rise. It spilled over the banks without rain. Fields flooded. Livestock vanished. The well turned dark. And worst of all, people began to dream of drowning. Milin, a young girl, barely 12, awoke choking on water that wasn't there. She cried, and blood ran from her eyes. The river had called her name in the night. Her parents tried to flee with her to a neighboring village, but by morning, only the ox cart was found torn to splinters, slick with water, no footprints in the mud. The village was dying. The headman, desperate, tried to resume the ancient rites, but the dolls no longer floated. The wine turned black. The needles bent in his fingers. That night, he walked into the river himself. He did not return, but a figure did. It wore his face but the wrong way around. Mouth split to the ears, hands stained with ink and blood. It climbed to the temple steps and spoke in a voice not meant for human ears. You offered silence. You offered obedience. Then you offered nothing. Now, you will give me everything. That was when the weeping began. For days, it rained blood. The trees bled from their bark. The soil turned soft and red. The river swelled into the homes and whispered old names into sleeping ears. Some villagers drowned themselves willingly, smiling as they walked into the flood. Others tried to hide. None succeeded. Only one survived to tell the tale. His name was Bo, a mute stonemason who had never spoken a word in his life. He fled into the mountains with nothing but his hammer and a prayer stone. For 3 nights he hid in a cave, listening to the river creep closer. On the 4th night, he carved a single word into the stone. Remember. Then the weeping stopped. The river receded. The sky cleared. When Bao returned to Yanshui, the village was gone, swallowed by red earth and broken reeds. The houses had rotted into nothing. No voices echoed through the streets. No drowned walked the shore. Only the river remained calm, glistening, innocent. The imperial soldiers who returned years later found only the river and the carving. They assumed it was superstition. They built a garrison nearby, drained the surrounding swamps, dug a canal through the old riverbed. Within a month, every soldier vanished. The river turned red again. And at night, if you walk the banks of what used to be Yanshui, you might see a woman standing in the water. She will be beautiful and still, her robes flowing like blood, her face half hidden beneath long, dark hair. She may call your name. If she does, don't answer. She only calls those who will drown. And worse than drowning is returning.